Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast spotlights. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And today we have a special returning guest, good friend and spider nerd of the podcast, Kalloth, or just Cal, here to talk about a movie that I am very surprised he was not aware of.
Yeah, it's funny because I really thought long and hard about it after you introduced this to me, and I really don't think I've ever even heard of this, or even just ever even knew of it even existing until after you mentioned it to me. But I am very grateful that you introduced me to it, and I think it's going to be like one of those new favorites just to watch when I want to just watch something really, what's the way to put this, so bad that it's good. Really, it's like this is the Spider-Man of the room, if I can put it that way.
Yes. So for those who haven't caught on, we're talking about Italian Spiderman.
And you're not the only one, Cal, who had never heard of it. From a few interviews that I found with David Ashby, that when Across the Spider-Verse came out, they had originally reached out and be like, we kind of want to put Italian Spider-Man in it.
I found this out as well. It's so interesting that they actually did that.
And Marvel was like, we don't know what that is, but we don't own it, so no.
The fact that they actually wanted to do that, though, and I'm trying to imagine how that could have gone with the meeting. Yeah, we want this guy in the background. It's Spider-Man, but really only by name only. So put him in the background as a joke.
Well, and even then, the guys who created Italian Spider-Man didn't own Spider-Man.
No.
Nope.
Which is why he's the most un-Spider-Man of every Spider-Man ever.
Yeah. So for those who are unfamiliar with it, Italian Spider-Man is an Australian parody film posted as the Lost Italian film by Alrugo Entertainment, and it was originally released as shorts on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
But this is how old Italian Spider-Man is. It's from 2007, so it's the early days of YouTube. And I can't remember. I think I found it when I first moved back to the States in 2009 or something, around 2009 or 2010, something when it had fully been edited into one long movie.
Yep.
Or short movie, because it's only 40 minutes long.
It is still on YouTube for those who have not managed to see it. That's honestly the best place to watch it. The ads on the side really add to the ambience of the movie watching experience.
That's also why I watched it too, because I didn't realize I couldn't really find it anywhere else, and I just got lazy the other night. So I'm like, this is good enough for me. It really does show its age when you messaged me saying, yeah, it's around early YouTube days. I'm like, oh, this reminds you of the older videos I used to watch, when YouTube had a 5-star rating, or actually just that alone just kind of dates it. Or I think when they had dislike buttons. It really showed that it felt like an early YouTube video.
Yeah, back in the days of Smosh and the Angry Video Game Nerd.
Dang.
Yeah.
Or just when Let's Plays were starting for the very first time, on YouTube, with someone doing a 10-minute video of it, and it was in 30 different parts. That might have been my era more than you guys, but still, it definitely felt its age.
Oh, yeah.
I was a sophomore or junior in high school, depending on when this came out.
Yeah.
I was much younger than you guys. I don't want to say to make you guys feel old, so we're just going to say I was a young kid then. Let's put it that way.
Oh, no, I know. But yeah, so to give everyone some frame of reference, that's where this movie, I'll refer to it as a movie because that's how it's been re-edited.
Yes.
That's where this came from, so it's that days. Oh, and now I'm also reminding it's probably around, no, that was later. I was thinking about Filthy Frank and Pink Guy. That was later. Yeah.
Later in the YouTube world.
God. A little bit of background on it. It's written by Dario Russo, David Aspey, Tite Wilson, Will Spartalis, and Boris Rapaski. It's directed by Russo, and it stars David Aspey as Italian Spider-Man physically, and Dario Russo as the voice of Italian Spider-Man. And some of this group went on to make a surrealist Australian show called Danger 5. Yes.
They were originally going to do this as the TV show, but because they were worried about copyright with the whole Spider-Man thing, it got reworked into Danger 5, which supposedly is good. I will have to check it out because the stills from it, the memes from it, very funny. Have I had time to look into what appears to be the goofiest Australian show ever? No, I have not.
Yeah, I don't know. Italian Spider-Man is, if I had a way to describe it, it is the most on-the-nose parody of Italians more so than Spider-Man itself.
Which makes sense, because when they were, the interview I found with them, they were talking about how they didn't really want it to be based on Spider-Man. They wanted it to be based on action adventure movies from the 60s and 70s, which makes a lot of sense, especially with how much cigarettes there are in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense actually.
I mean, the intro is the opening scene is very much a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, like one of those classic ones with like Sean Connery. Like honestly, made me think of like just his era of films in the '60s right away, with how dramatic it was and how basically it led to a fight there. So
yeah, I do kind of wish I had seen this when it first came out because I was living in Italy when this was being released. So showing it to all the Italians I knew or the Italian Americans probably would have pissed them off.
It's a strong parody.
I kind of wish I saw this when it came out. So I'm going to tell you guys anyways. I was 10 when this came out, so I'm really curious to how it would have reacted because A, I'm sure a lot of it would have gone right over my head, and B, that was right around after, I think, that was right when Spider-Man 3 came out, so I was in like my peak childhood era of loving Spider-Man, so I'm really curious to how it would have reacted, how 10-year-old Cal would have seen all this, because I could either have loved it or thought it was the worst thing ever, and I would have never thought of it again, but it's a shame.
True.
Yeah, and so I guess first question of the day, and part of the reason I wanted to talk about you with this one is because I know you are a huge Spider-Man fan. Why is Italian Spider-Man the best Spider-Man?
Because he is. He's definitely
because his mustache is a gun, and like his... I can't even take it serious. Like this absurdity of his powers was just so funny because it really just felt like they were making shit up on the fly. But at the same time, it's the Room Spider-Man, or really the Room of probably any comic book character movie ever. Because like when he brought in penguins all of a sudden to help him out, like just such a random thing to bring in. I actually had to pause my screen because I couldn't stop laughing. I'm like, why is this happening right now? And I rewinded it. I'm like, no, this can't be real. Oh no, it's real. Okay, cool. Or just none of it made any sense, but at the same time, like, just put it this way, it was so bad that it was good, and that's what made it so... I've never seen a Spider-Man film, or really any piece of Spider-Man media that just made me say, what the fuck, so many times.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just a little bit sensitive, because I've watched it a handful of times at this point. I did actually list out all of his superpowers that I could tell.
That's good, because I was confused, seeing as he doesn't seem to have any Spider-Man superpower.
Oh, no. It's really just Spider-Man by name only, and some of it, like his outfits, the color palette's inspired, but other than that, it's not the same.
It feels very handmade, like with his like his grandmother sewed his the spider on his shirt. Yeah, and it's not a Spider-Man spider; it's just a spider. Yeah, it's not even like a logoized spider.
I mean, I'll give credit there, at least where it's due, because in the Nicholas Hammond version in the 1970s, they didn't even draw a spider. They actually just drew an ant onto his shirt, and it's so obvious that, like, once you notice it, you can't unsee it, and it's hysterical to think back to. At least they got that right out of everything else. Everything else was to interpretation.
I mean, that is good, because they did actually have, I believe, sisters working as the credited costumers for this movie. So good for them. They also had someone credited as Squirrel Grip. Congrats, Matt Vasili. Don't know what you did in the movie.
I did see that, actually.
Squirrel Grip.
But I did a little bit of reading on, because I've started going down a little reading rabbit hole of older superhero movies. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize there were 4 Spider-Man movies between 1977 and 1981 before the 2002 Sam Raimi movies. And one of those is Japanese Spider-Man, too. So.
Oh, okay.
Makes sense.
Because he actually has a movie on top of like 26 episodes of a show.
Of course.
Back to his superpowers just a little bit. His superpowers are he can make chickens lay eggs.
They also lay cigarettes.
That's what I have next.
Okay.
Especially El Gallo. For the quite preferred cigarettes of Italian Spider-Man.
Okay. I am re-listening to old-timey radio shows. Specifically, I'm re-listening to the Sherlock Holmes. And this part right here was such a hard play at the old 60s, 70s, like, retelling of advertisement at the time. Because you literally would just stop whatever you're doing in the middle of the show and be like, Petridge Farms, the best wine. And then, like, continue on with the show.
Yeah, and El Gallo just means rooster.
Even more impressive, because those don't normally lay eggs.
Nope. But as you mentioned, he can summon penguins. Mm-hmm. He can swat away snakes. That's a real superpower right there.
Levitating snakes.
He can smoke while swatting away snakes.
This man can smoke and do anything.
Yeah, okay.
I love this, like, no define, like he just kind of does whatever the plot needs to do, and really, he is the embodiment of that the entire time with just the absurd shit that he was doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You guys were wrong. He has 1 spider power. He can control spiders.
Now, I'm not a Spider-Man fan, but I don't remember Spider-Man controlling spiders.
There's
Man Spider, who's
yeah, that's where I was gonna go with. There's some fucked up versions where like he turns into a human spider hybrid, or the really fucked up versions where his entire body is completely gone and it's just spiders inside of his suit, and basically there's like an homage to when he gave up his powers, to the skin is there instead, and it's kind of creepy. Now I'm saying that out loud more, but still.
So okay, they got one kind of remote Spider-Man power.
Teleportation. I guarantee you there's a Spider-Man out there who can teleport.
Sure.
Must have had like a teleportation device.
We've got another Spider-Man power that we saw in Into the Spider-Verse. He had a dad bod before it was cool.
This Spider-Man is the definition of a dad bod in a tight suit.
Yeah.
His mustache is an exploding boomerang.
Yeah, which makes a gun cocking noise when he pulls it off his face.
He can pull guns out of his ass.
Yeah, yes he can.
And the best superpower, he is a sex machine. He is both sexist and also defender of women. Respected to the daughter.
I love how there is a scene where he is surprised by a woman, goes to immediately punch her, realizes it is a beautiful woman, and then immediately invites her to his bed later.
God, like,
make me a macchiato, pussycat.
And then just slaps her right across the fucking face. Like, I just, oh, God.
The only English. So bad.
I feel this movie got the 70s so much better than Austin Powers ever could.
It really did, because Austin Powers was such a caricature of the 70s sex machine. This is just the most stupid movie storytelling, and you can kind of see it in like 70s B films, I think easiest, and like maybe some spaghetti westerns from Italy specifically, where like the men are just garbage to everyone. They're garbage to each other, they're terrible to the ladies around them, and yet the women, who they literally will just smack her and then she will fawn into their arms dramatically. This captures that in the best way.
It's Captain Kirk.
That's like old James Bond films, actually, like with Sean Connery, where he even like made jokes about like just slapping women. It's like, oh, it's okay, you can just slap a woman, it's fine. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, no, this movie parodies it so perfectly, because there's not even any seriousness when in themselves with like the timing or anything.
No, it even did the whole good, the bad, and the ugly stare down at the poker table, where it went on just a little bit too long.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which it does kind of make me wonder how long these episodes, like if their episode length was just what they could write, or if that was like the limitations of YouTube back in the day.
I kind of know this one. So in the interview I could dig up. So they made the first episode, which they called their trailer episode. That one was just meant to be a YouTube one, which is kind of why you can see a difference, I think, in quality between the first like little bit of the movie and then like the rest has like, I think they put more effort into the visuals, especially the penguins part. But the reason why there was that change was they made the first one, didn't really intend to do a ton with it, but then they took it to, I think, either the Southern or the Northern Australian Movie Film Corporation, and they got funding for that because people liked it so much. They got a good bit of funding. Like, enough that they were like, yes, go, make this garbage movie. And so that's where the rest of this came from. They had a real budget. After the first episode, they hired like several more people, which is, I think, where the costumers come in, where this squirrel gripper, I don't know what he does in the movie, but he's credited. So he must have done something.
Grips are like the assistants.
Well, he's the squirrel grip. So
I'm actually curious how much their budget even was, because I did find a number online for it. It was a decent amount of Australian dollars ago. I just don't know how much it translates to American dollars. Just give me 1 sec, because now you get me really curious.
I don't know about back then. I know today we are weak against the Australian dollar. They have more buying power than us.
Yeah, so it'd be about like $6,300 today. So, I mean, give or take, things were different then. But still, I mean, they got some money for this masterpiece to work on. So
for a YouTube movie, which, I mean, back in the day, back when this was made,
right,
no money was put into these. We were going to Walmart, buying some string and some silly putty and calling that good. So, like, that's a good bit of money for a shitty movie.
Yeah, even technically with that budget, I could alone finance it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, like this, I mean, they're not making Masterpiece, which is why I think it's still on YouTube, but that's okay.
No, exactly. But yeah, I don't know. The one thing I really appreciate about Italian Spider-Man is that it is low budget and it knows what it is from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not trying to be like the superhero movie or the scary movies, which obviously I've been around for a bit at that point. But it really takes its own cheesiness to a different level, I think.
I also think it really shows off their use of free film that they found. Because I think you forgot a superpower. I do think he flies temporarily.
Yes.
And the background, because he flies, I think, twice. And the background scene of him flying is the exact same in both scenes.
I was trying to think when that was, because I vaguely remember him flying once, but that was about it.
It might have been just in the intro.
Yeah, because
it's just him in front of a window washer's butt. They didn't mean for it to be that way, but they just had one green screen shot, so...
And that intro is great, too. It captures that era of just shitty shows and movies so well.
Yes.
I mean, hell, even like some of the, I guess, budget exploitation films of the era, too, work really well in that style.
And the thing that I love the best is they advertise this as a lost Italian Spider-Man film, and yet it is so clearly dubbed into Italian that it's almost Kung Pao level bad.
I can agree with that.
Cal, have you seen Kung Pao yet?
No, I have not.
Oh my god, we might have to do a recap with you on that. You would love Kung Pao.
It's gold.
That's the film that you have your bits alert from, where that's a lot of nuts from.
Yep, yeah, that's a lot of nuts, and I think I've got one more where it's chosen one.
That's my favorite line of the whole movie. Is just her yelling, "Chosen one, I'm coming."
It's low budget on a completely different level.
It's low budget with a lot of money.
The guy Steve Odenkirk took an old Chinese film and re-edited it with himself in it. So,
yeah, I remember you talking about that. Yeah,
and yeah, I don't know. It's Italian Spider-Man has a completely different feel from that, though. I think where
it does, because Kung Pao, while being silly and wanting to be silly, it tries to be an actual movie. This collection of short films understands that its essence, its core, is early YouTube vibes. You can see the strings hanging up the snakes. The man is just chain smoking so hard through this movie that it's like almost a plot point.
Plus, none of it really made any sense at all. Like the amount of just random shit that would just happen because the plot needed to happen. Like the random ass guy coming in and then turning into a crocodile and fighting him when they came into his apartment, or like you mentioned, the rooster laying an egg and then a cigarette right afterwards. Like none of it was meant to be taken seriously, but that's really what actually I think makes it a kind of a good film. Is just they just didn't give a fuck. If they wanted to do it, they just did it. And that's what made it work for me.
Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, that's the creativeness you need to just do something something original. Because I've been thinking about, like, other parody movies of, like, just in general. Because, honestly, I don't think we've had a really good, quote-unquote, parody film in a very long time. Even the scary movies, they have their own style, but they tried carrying that over into like the superhero movie, epic movie, and it just became a little bit, I guess, cringy later on when it was a little too self-aware. I think that's what it is.
Actually,
this Italian Spider-Man, it has like that touch of surrealist nature to it, but it doesn't go fully into it, but it also doesn't acknowledge that it's not a show. It makes itself feel like it's reality.
Well, and also they let it die when it was meant to be done. Like, they thought about taking this farther, and their ideas are clearly very good. Their writing is hilarious. They're like, they clearly work well as a group to make something funny, but continuing on with Italian Spider-Man was obviously not the right way to go, so they didn't do it. They moved on to work on other stuff, unlike Scary Movie.
Plus, like, even to the way the superhero fatigue is now, like, there's no one movie and you're done, or even, like, a conversation that Nacho frequently I have is Godzilla -1 was perfect the way it was, and they're probably not going to do another one after that point, and that's just not really heard of today, considering the way Marvel is, and the way they're just going to keep churning out more and more movies, or even the way DC, or not even just Marvel, but like a lot of the big superhero groups now, like The Boys still has like 2 spin-offs planned after their, or 3 spin-offs planned already, and they should just let it die when it dies, like, because once you tell a story, you don't need to tell any more after that, obviously, but...
Well, and you're also looking at, even though they're in the same industry, they're 2 completely separate models. Japan they haven't really done I guess, they've done lower budget serial movies, but it's only been like 1 or 2 parts, whereas Italian Spider-Man feels like it could have been part of like a serial film, which Like Zatoichi is one of the longest running serial films where it's segments. Well, it's like the Lone Ranger. America's moved away from that quite a bit, and also their budgeting is a lot different too. So there's a lot of comparisons there. But I'm glad we brought up some of the practical and physical stuff of this movie. I was listening to a commentary earlier today from Tom Mess, and he mentioned that you need some degree of reality, or otherwise it becomes an animation. And I think that's what this parody works so well with, is it keeps it within its own world and its own reality. It doesn't try and that's I think that's the other thing too. It doesn't try and bring in a bunch of other references. It's its own reference. It doesn't, and it doesn't need to reference anything else.
Well, and especially in a world where YouTube has morphed from just a platform where idiots upload videos of random ass shit to like a full functioning entertainment source. Like there are now full-length movies produced, created by YouTubers for YouTube, and they are full-length feature films with like a full production crew behind them. Like, they're big budget productions at this point.
Yeah.
But while those are like amazing that we've gotten that far, they lack a lot of, most of the time I say, they lack a lot of the intrigue that I think this one will have people coming back to, solely because this one captures the heart of what people are drawn to YouTube for anyway. Like, most of the time we're there to watch some idiot talk about something or do something. This is just idiots on screen in the best way. It's got a really great runtime. It's like, none of the episodes are terribly long, and even if you watch the whole thing in one sitting, the pacing is good enough. It leaves you with enough questions of like, what the hell was that? There's nothing else to look into. It's just this.
Well, and I mean, to be fair, also those YouTube quote unquote documentaries.
No, I mean full-fledged movies.
I know. There's some. I'm talking like someone puts up documentary to make it sound like it's a.
Oh sure, film. No, I'm talking about like the full-length production, like fully written. Like, there's been some murder mysteries. There's been a few choose your own adventure movies. There's been several space movies, adventure movies, like big movies, but they're usually produced by someone who already has a huge backing and a lot of money, which is great. Like, that's amazing that they get that chance to do something they wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity for. But while they're good, they're not like that addictive quality of coming back and like being able to rewatch it on a dime.
Yeah. Well, Cal, I'm glad you brought up the superhero burnout that everyone's kind of experiencing, right? Or mostly collectively. How do you think Italian Spider-Man is a nice break from that?
Yes.
Better question, is Italian Spider-Man a superhero?
He is in my book, because I'm going to petition for him to be in the next Spider-Verse, even if it's just a really random thing in the background where he's just kind of there, or they're jumping universe and we happen to run across his. Like, I'm going to stand behind that. But to your point, I think it's a nice break because it was just so absurd and none of it made any sense, but that's okay. Like, I think we forget, well, at least, okay, this is maybe a hot take, especially for you two especially, but I think like we're so used to over analyzing films and so used to like we need to break down everything from the plot, the characters, the crew, like everything, when I could just watch this and have a fun time. Like, I didn't have to think too hard, which is great because I was exhausted last night watching this, but still, I like that we can't really do that anymore with most films. Like, we have to overanalyze everything, and this is not meant to be taken very seriously or not meant to be that deep. It's, when you really think about it, you can call out so many things like that. That's why I think, I don't know how this would fare today if this was somehow released now and nobody knew of it, but at the same time, like, this was just such a nice change of pace. Like, I think this is timed well with the recent Robert Downey Jr. news with him being Doctor Doom, which I'm still not thrilled about, because to me, like, Disney is trying to pull a Hail Mary, and they're trying to get people invested in superhero films again, because I think the age of the superhero is kind of fading away because video game adaptations are starting to really overtake it. Like, Borderlands just came out. And
Borderlands, from what I've heard, is absolute dog shit.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd say that it was that bad. That, like, even my friend Vault Hunter, who really wanted to see, is like, I'm just going to wait for it to stream because it just looks awful. Or we live in the, like, we have Yakuza coming up in 2 months, actually, or we have the next Sonic coming out and whatever. We have a spin-off show of him. Like, the main thing is this is just a nice break, and it's not serious, nothing you have to think too hard about. You can just have fun with it, and I think people forget today that you can just still do that with films. You don't have to. There doesn't have to be a deeper meaning behind it. It could just be a one and done thing, and then you leave it at that. Like when you want to watch something that's going to turn your brain off, you just go watch that. If you want to watch something really stupid, go watch that. You want to watch it with your friends ironically, go watch it then. So
this does something that I think the 60s and 70s, especially the Italian movie franchise, but like in general, I think does much better than we do now. Now movies and TV shows, which used to be such episodic things, right? Like they were like, oh, what wacky, crazy thing's going to happen to the Lone Ranger this week, or Spider-Man this week.
And, oh no, Robin, you got drugged with cataclaws.
Yeah, like, and it was always something completely out of left field. It was fully bonkers. There was no like tying this bigger picture or story together. That's almost not a thing anymore. Like even kids shows have an overarching plot and character growth and development. This does a great job of, in the most parody way, showing off what we liked about those old movies that were like a genre of movie where you were just there to be brain rotted into what weird thing your favorite character was going to do next.
Yeah, well, and I don't know, because I know I only got caught up on Marvel like 2 years ago.
Sure.
To try and get like roughly caught up, because I was curious where it was going to go, because the next phase was going to start. Everyone was hyped for it, and I'm like, all right, I'll see what it's all about. But most of the superhero movies I watch aren't American. Shocker there.
Well,
but like,
who would have thought? I'm sorry, I just was making funny there because like, who would have thought you'd like watching American films?
Well, like I think what it is we expect something from American superhero films and other American media to have that deeper meaning. Whereas like we've talked about it, where like Hellraiser, that director, Clive Barker, he's like, oh, wrapping everything up, crossing your I's and dotting your T's, that's an American thing. Whereas we don't let movies be what they are. Like, for example, going to superhero films, Takashi Miike directed this film called Zebra Man.
Yeah.
And it's about a middle-aged man trying to be a superhero. It's kind of, for me, it's like the middle-aged Kick-Ass.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it reminded me of right off the bat.
And it's actually pretty good. Like, it's got a good meaning to it, but it's also one where it's just so dumb you can shut your mind off to it as well. Or like you look at Kamen Rider, or I picked up this movie a couple years ago called Gun Caliber, and it is one of the dumbest superhero films I watched. But I enjoyed it because I got to shut off it's not a good movie by any means, but I got to shut off my brain and relax a little bit.
Yeah. Well, and like if Italian Spider-Man ever had an amazing resurgence with budget and like was turned into a whole thing, that would be what I would hope to see, is like kind of in the same way that like I do think Japan still does it the best with having movies, but they are super episodic. Like Detective Conan, I think, is a really good example. Like you keep going back because you like the characters.
Yeah.
The plot doesn't matter. And that's what I think Italian Spider-Man does the best, because each episode, even though they're short, does not connect to the next thing in the movie in any way. And that's the best part, because I don't know what's going to happen next.
Well, just superhero movies in general, not superhero movies, anime movies in general.
Yes, they do a great job of what's coming next. Nobody knows. Could be penguins.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
That, and we don't really have that anymore with like any kind of Marvel movie, or even like any, almost, I didn't want to say superhero movie, but like most universes, like Fast and Furious, they're always setting up more sequels. The fact that they have that series will be around by the time they're done almost 40 years, I think, because they're planning to go until 2030, and it started in the late 90s, and I think they could have honestly been fine after Paul Walker died. I mean, I don't know the Fast and Furious films well enough, but I can safely say like that was a nice tribute they did to him. But still, like I think back to the Dark Universe, which I don't know if you guys even heard about, but there was like a Universal planned horror movie universe that was supposed to happen, but it never did because the first movie of it sucked, and they were so focused on, we need to have a great universe, like we need to set up the new Nick Fury, we got to set up this wider universe of characters, when they forgot to make an actually good film at the end of the day. And that just, like, to me, I don't think you can really do that anymore without setting up seeds for a later movie, because like, or Black Adam, that was another DC movie that came out a couple years ago.
Oh God.
Yeah, there's a lot we could say about that film as it is, but Dwayne Johnson really only did that because he saw a business opportunity. Like, he saw he could overtake the entire DC universe and change the hierarchy, like he kept saying over and over again, but he wanted to create a bigger universe. He didn't, because he kept saying, yeah, our team up with Superman is going to be a great time. And I'm like, why are you focusing on this that hasn't even happened yet? Like, focused on now. What's actually happening, not a future thing that could never even happen, because it didn't happen and it never will.
Well, and that goes back to my thoughts on Marvel, is I still think the best Marvel movie is, at least of the original runs, was the first Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man, because it was a good standalone movie. And that's what it needed. Like, I mean, I went back when I started watching all of them. The good standalone movies are the ones that still stuck with me. Like Iron Man, I actually, going back and watching Captain America, I thought those were actually, his arc was actually a really good arc as well. Like, but the way they worked his story into the overarching story worked so much better. Like when it hit Civil War, it's like, okay, this works so well because he's changing his view on the world is changing, since what he defended isn't the world that he was defending now.
True, but I do think Italian Spider-Man does something that this is going to sound like backwards thinking here, but I promise it makes sense from someone who watches a lot of older like media. Italian Spider-Man highlights the fact that the main character, Italian Spider-Man, does not improve or change in any way. And that's the whole point. Like, that was the whole like shtick for the 60s and 70s for like Italian movies, a lot of American Western movies, honestly a lot of Japanese like animes and stuff had kind of a similar like vibe, like, oh, I'm the same superpower guy, the only difference is that I have friends now. Like having the minimal change makes a character easier to enjoy because I don't care what happens to him.
So does that more so say about the writing of the world and the story, that what makes it interesting, other than the character? Because the same thing happens in Back to the Future. Marty McFly is the exact same person.
Yes, and it's why Back to the Future is one of the best trilogies, because Marty McFly is the same asshole from start to end. No, I stand by that. I think a lot of cult classics, like, that people stupidly want to watch, like, we're not talking about intellectual movies, we're not talking about like the best created or like the most inspirational or anything, just movies that you have a good time watching, don't need a like full through plot, and they don't need character development, we don't need improvement. This man is an ass from start to end, and I love him because he is a disrespectful mustachioed man.
Excuse me, he is constantly saying respecta de la donna.
Yes, yeah, well, he also like punches a girl randomly because she spooked him a little bit, but that's fun. That like, and I think it was something that older TV shows, when we rewatch, and I see it a lot with a lot of critics more recently, like, we go back and we're like, oh, well, remember that like this is an older movie, so like they were just rude back then, or they were just mean back then, and like to an extent, yeah, but I also think that like having these characters that like aren't better, they don't improve, and the plot isn't about like, oh, look at this terrible character, like my husband's currently like very into The Boys, and he's like, oh my gosh, this character, Christine, you'd like this character doesn't get better, and I'm like, yeah, but that's the whole point of the show, is like, look how shitty this man is. This man is shitty, and I don't care, because he's hilarious as he is.
So I'm going to ask you something real here, quick, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
It's an episode that hasn't come out yet, but Piranha 3D.
Yeah.
How does that relate? Because none of the characters get better. None of them change in that either.
And that's the best part of the movie. Like, when we talk about in our episode, my favorite part of the movie is when we lose our mind and we start pulling out decapitated leg shotgun and like just start shooting piranhas in a pool. And that's the vibe the whole movie should have had, because the rest of the movie tried to have some form of
like seriousness to it. I remember
it
tried to be like what Jaws did, where it's like, oh, this is so scary, what's happening. Like, no, it's not going to be a serious film. It's never going to be a serious film. It never was. Even way back then, it was a parody of Jaws. That's where they got the inspiration from. So
exactly. And like, granted, by the third one, they were trying to parody other styles of horror films. And that's
why we love Jaws 3D.
It is why we love Jaws 3D, but it's not what worked for Piranha, because Piranha already had a parody that it needed to stick with, and they lost it in the midst of all of the other parody. But yeah, no, a lot of the movies that like, no, they're never going to be great, they're never going to be good. But if you want to sell money, if you want people to come and rewatch it over and over again, maybe don't worry too much about the character morality and development of your main guy. Maybe just let him be.
So I have some good points that you guys actually made me think of during it. I think it's a really good point you bring up that they don't grow at all, because that can work very well for a long period of time. Like, so I think I told you before to watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, because it's a great embodiment of these guys do not grow, and that's what makes them so entertaining, because I love seeing them all suffer. I love seeing them all do shitty things to people because they're just shitty people. They're not good. They're not never meant to be people you idolize. Like, even at a point when they have some good aspects to them, it goes away by the end of the episode, and that's the best part about them, because we get, like, I look forward to how they're going to end the show if they ever decide to end it. Like, they're probably all going to die horribly, and I kind of want to see how that turns out, because they're not good people and they're never going to get better, and I'm okay with that fact. And like you bring up with Italian Spiderman, he is shitty from the beginning. He doesn't try to hide that at all. He's very shitty, and that's, I think, what makes him work so well as a character, because he's still the same shitty guy at the very end of it. Plus, you also bring up Back to the Future as well, and it's really fun you bring up this out of all movies, because I did just watch the whole series last week again for the first time in like years, and the only thing that changed about Marty was that he hates being called chicken. He's the exact same asshole from the beginning. Well, okay, not asshole, but kind of a dickhead, kind of not the greatest person, but that's the point of him. He's not meant to be the best protagonist, so, but he hasn't changed, and we still love Back to the Future. People still always rank as a good comfort nostalgia film as Back to the Future, or a feel-good film, so.
And I think especially for, like, a movie, because, like, I mean, Italian Spider-Man's definitely harping on, like, the whole episodic movie thing, right? Like, yeah, they only made 40 minutes worth of it, but they kind of thought they'd keep going. There wasn't any money in it. They got prospects for bigger, better things. They were going to be on real TV. So, like, obviously we're going to lose Italian Spider-Man for them to be on actual Australian TV. But, like, the idea of every week you see the same asshat doing some new ridiculous thing used to be, like, a pretty standard TV, like, concept. And we have kind of lost it. Like, most American TV shows, even, like, the, like, normal daytime TV, have some form of, like, overarching plot, even if it's very drawn out.
There's not, like, good filler anymore. Like, I think of some older episodes, like Avatar: The Last Airbender back in the day didn't have any filler, but when it had any filler to begin with, it made it work for a purpose. And, like, there was, at a point, like, I think of the Adam West 60s Batman, and how there was shows that don't progress, or there are episodes that don't progress the story because it wasn't meant to. Like, it's just meant to be villain of the week for a reason, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to have, like I said, some overarching plot or some really deep meaning behind it. It could just be, hey, this is a dumb episode about Batman fighting, I don't know, a guy who thinks he's King Tut. That's really cool. Next episode, Robin got drugged and he has to go rescue him. So, like, that's, I miss those days, because it was just so, I don't even want to say simplistic, but it was very simple. Like, if you look at, like, an average Netflix adaptation, there's 10 solid episodes, which are great. I'm not going to deny they're not good, but there's nothing, it's just meat. There's no potatoes, there's nothing else to it as well. It's just all about the plot, and that's it, which is not as great as it can be.
Yeah, it's like, I recently finished Columbo like 2 months ago.
Thank you, Columbo.
Where that was a murder of the month, and I think there were like 2 other shows, and I think Murder, She Wrote was also kind of in that style.
Oh, very. To the point where they ran out of people to murder, and they had to find new people by, like, season 10 or something.
Yeah, but that's what I liked about Columbo, was that because it was so spread out towards the last 20 episodes, was Columbo was this old school detective who was having to deal with shit that was happening in the 90s and early 2000s. Actually, Columbo ended around the same time Italian Spider-Man, or a few years before Italian Spider-Man picked up.
But yeah, having that comfort of just, like, knowing what you're going to be tuning into, knowing that you're not going to get some, like, crazy new surprise that, like, oh man, now I got to really rethink these characters and what I know about them because of this big life-changing thing. Like, oh, you know, how they handled that problem really changed them as a character. No. TV used to just be like, oh, you turn it on and, like, oh, what silly thing is Lucille Ball going to do now?
It's like the first season of One Punch Man, where that's a good one too.
And, like, that's why people loved One Punch Man, was because it was stupid and we didn't, like, there was no consequences to it.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is One Punch Man never changed. Spider-Man is the same. He is so powerful, he'll kill everything in one go.
Psyche K was the same way. It was the same reason people, like, really gravitated to it, was because we were honestly tired of having to follow all these people's, like, drama and, like, what was happening and, oh, who's now a good guy, who's wrestling with their morality, who's related to who. I don't care in Psyche. Like, he's just here for some good times and some coffee jelly.
Even like the older Simpsons episodes were the same way. Like, they were just episode of the week and that was it. There was no large plot to it, and at the end of the day, nothing mattered because I don't know if they ever said it specifically, but every season resets to the current year it's set in, so nothing really does matter for these characters. They're not going to grow. They're just going to stay the same age, but be more, will have like current events going on at the same time. So,
I mean, Family Guy did the same thing, like back when like old Family Guy sort of stuff. Like, it was just the stupid people that you tuned into and like what shenanigans. Like, maybe they'd throw some like current event in there, but it was always like the dumb current event of the week, and it didn't impact the world at all.
Yeah, like it was just really a one-off scene there, of anything, or a cutaway gag where you see that something happened, and then next scene, and it's already forgotten about by that point, and it's not important unless it's a major event they're happening in the show. So
exactly.
Well, how do you market that though? That's kind of the thing I've been thinking about, is how do you make that actually interesting, especially for like American audiences where Japanese cinema and superheroes have become so inundated, like My Hero Academia, Mob Psycho 100, like all these kind of like superhero-esque stuff are doing so much better than American comic books, that they're kind of in a stalemate because American comic books haven't really moved on fully past the comic book code era, and they're really having to struggle finding that identity. So how do you even get people interested in a story of the week?
And I think Italian Spiderman once again brings us the answer here. You don't want to be affiliated with one of these big companies. We've seen a couple of shows that kind of sort of had the right vibe for that, and they get killed after the first season because Disney doesn't like them, HBO decides they don't make enough money off of them, or if we just pay this like big name actor more money, we can get them to do, and like, this comedian, they're going to be in this TV show. YouTube is a free-for-all ground, and we know it, and it still works to an extent. And if in front of the right people, in front of the right eyes, it can become a whole thing.
Well, look at like Black Mirror, or what's that other, Love, Death, and Robots.
Sure, Love, Death, and Robots I think is a good example of like a more serious version of it. I do think that Black Mirror, there's a lot of inspiration from the horror book world that, like, if you're not a book person, it doesn't necessarily translate over, which like adds, I think, to the fun and lore, because like you don't necessarily see the correlations.
Yeah. Well, Marvel did do something like that. They did What If.
They did, and then they killed it because it didn't make enough money.
And it's a shame because I think it had some really cool ideas that I'm like, wow, I want to see where that goes. Oh, okay, next season. Like, their Marvel Zombies was a great idea because they would never do that on the major movie. They never will do that, and I know for a fact because it's just too violent. Like, they don't want to see any of their main characters getting killed on screen. They're going to have voice animators do their characters instead, and that's how it's going to go. That's why, you're right about that. Plus, I also think something to bring up is this didn't really have any nostalgia to go off of, because a lot of the times they're trying to cash on nostalgia now. Like, the big thing I've noticed, and I really hate that it's a thing with superhero films, is they're going to go off nostalgia now. They're not going to go off anything new, which is really a problem. Like, I love No Way Home, and I'm wearing a shirt from No Way Home, for crying out loud. I love that film, and I will stand by being a great film, but if I put my nostalgia aside, it would have been like probably like a 8 or 9, probably like a 7 or 8 out of 10. Or the new Deadpool. They brought back Hugh Jackman. I'm absolutely thrilled we got him back because I think he was great, and it was satisfying to see him finally in the role. But at the end of the day, their two biggest movies they made a lot of money on have been nostalgia movies. Nothing has gotten even close to $1 billion, or even, I want to say, even half. Like, all their films have been duds. And there are some good films that they made post Endgame, but nothing has made almost $1 billion besides those two films, and they have nostalgia in common. So.
Well, and the thing that I've seen happen a lot too, and again, I think Italian Spider-Man did it right, where they put it on the platform first, and then they like advertised it around. They knew they weren't going to make money off of it. That's how they knew it was something that was like worth hanging on to. The stuff that is actually a new idea, and maybe it's not the best, but it has the inklings of being good if it just had a little bit more fan backing. The big places don't advertise it until it's too late. Like, you've already missed it in theaters, sort of too late.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe that, because we've talked about it a couple episodes ago about celebrating mediocrity.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's something we need to look back at, because one of my favorite it's not, I wouldn't call it a superhero movie, but it's superhero adjacent.
Sure.
It's called Defendor,
Mm-hmm.
and it got heavily looked over, I feel, partially because of Kick-Ass was coming out around the same time. If you haven't seen it, it's about Woody Harrelson plays a dude with, he's not fully mentally challenged, but he's got something going on with him, but he tries to be a vigilante.
Yeah.
Very much along the same lines as Kick-Ass. Because that's the thing, Kick-Ass was good to start with. Like, the first movie, I still have to see the second one. I actually have it in my physical backlog. But the first one was good. It was a good standalone idea, and I think that's the issue. Well, I think that's the big issue is studios don't want to take that risk.
No.
And we have this gap where we don't have middle budget movies anymore. We either have really low budget or we have studio movies that are usually higher budget. And actually, I think I've just realized something. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to foreign media, is because they're starting to fill that role of the middle budget movie.
No, they 100% do. When I want something that's somewhat mindless to watch, I generally put on one of the newer anime movies that's on Crunchyroll or something, because I already know the characters. I don't really care what, bad guy they're going to fight in the Bleach movie number 8. Because I'm not following the show that closely, but I do like the characters and I like the fighting style, so why not watch it?
And I like your point on mediocrity, because that really does not exist anymore. And that was a thing really prior to, I guess, the 2010s, because how many films, or at least how many American films are made now with a medium-sized budget and just kind of go from there? Like, they have to either be, like, HBO was bragging about Game of Thrones costing millions per episode, or Walking Dead was bragging millions per episode. Like, they put a lot into this because they had high expectations it would do well, which it did, but they, low budget really doesn't, or mid budget doesn't really exist anymore. Like, I can't think of any recent films that have done that besides maybe a Netflix adaptation or two of something, but it's not really that common or that well known. So
I learned the reason movie budgets are so high is partially because of, or
marketing.
TV show budgets are so high is partially because of Seinfeld.
God damn it, Seinfeld.
Really?
Because they weren't paying them up front.
No, they missed out on a whole lot of money.
They missed out on a whole lot of money, and so when they had leverage, they came back and said, "Here's how much we want per episode," and it was a ridiculous amount for the time. It was like $1 million or so per episode, and we're talking this is what, the 80s,
90s,
90s. I mean, that's how much the Friends cast were getting towards the very end. They had a really small amount they got in the last season. They were negotiating a couple million per episode. So
yeah,
and don't get me wrong, I don't think people should be underpaid to get mediocrity, but I also think that maybe as a whole, as a Hollywood and entertainment industry, it's maybe time to revisit how much things are worth.
Mm-hmm.
Because sure, don't be wrong, I love that we have TV shows that are such high level production stuff. Game of Thrones was very cool, but at the same time, just because you throw money at it does not mean it's going to be good. Looking directly at you brings a power.
I haven't seen it, but I heard nothing was anything positive about it. But I mean, like you said, you can throw as much money as you want at it, but it doesn't mean it's going to be great immediately. That's funny you bring that up. They make fun of that in The Boys really briefly. They don't allude to Rings of Power, but well, we threw 80 million. It must be good. I'm like, is that a Lord of the Rings reference? But
and I mean, The Boys suffers from the same thing. They got kind of lucky that the timing of it worked out well, and the audience was at the point where a lot of people are sick of superhero movies. Timing wise, it worked out. I think if those two things hadn't worked out, I don't think spending as much money as they did on production for it would have benefited them in any way. And I think there's something to say about a mediocre TV show where it's the same set every week, it's the same cast every week, and we just do something a little goofy.
Yeah, have the Tropical Irish do a surf-off.
Exactly.
It's funny, you're making me think of, this is a weird example, and I wouldn't have thought this would come up, but I've been rewatching it, and I've been watching it kind of for this, I want to just get into it. So, I think, in a way, how The Office was, where The Office was not an amazing show by any means. It was never trying to be. Season 1 is still pretty hard to watch, but what I think works well with it is because it's a great background show. I got put onto a project at work and I needed just something that was in music, so I put on The Office for 2 days of work, and it was nice to just have something to look in the background with. And again, wasn't amazing. You could look at any episode, and if you kind of know the cast, you don't really need to know what's happening. You can just laugh at and appreciate it. And it's just dumb, mediocre humor that you can just turn your brain off and watch. And again, that doesn't exist anymore. shows like The Office won't exist. They're trying to reboot it as I think a newspaper company. It's not going to work because you can't recapture that magic. Like between that, or maybe it was the right place, right time, the right cast, or even just the world was so different back in the 2000s when this was coming out. Like people,
it's like
TV was not a thing.
Yeah,
it's like the '80s show with the guy who plays Dennis Reynolds from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
Oh,
no, I feel like the 60s and 70s were definitely peak at that, and Italian Spider-Man does a great job of highlighting how peak they were. I think the 80s kind of held on to it, and by the 90s we were starting to lose just dumb TV. And now we're fully out. We're out of dumb media to consume unless it's so low budget that it's just like two guys in their basement, which, I mean, Italian Spider-Man is just, what, 7 guys in their basement? So, like, clearly it can work.
Yeah.
It's just, like, how do we take this and, like, know that this format works? We know this formula works. How do we translate it onto something that's just slightly more easily accessible? Like, I don't need 3 guys in their basement, like, working hard every week to get me my episode.
I'll get the lads and us on something. We had a stupid idea that I think would be fun.
Perfect. I need new entertainment.
Sam.
So I got a few questions on Italian Spider-Man for you, Cal. I'll kind of bring it back to that because I know we went on a large tangent, kind of anti-Marvel tangent, which I'm okay with.
Oh, so am I. I mean, I'm definitely with you there after recent news of the RDJ.
So of the Spider-Man movies, where does Italian Spider-Man rank for you?
See, I've been having a hard time with this ever since you asked me this the other day because, like, by no means, I don't think it's the worst Spider-Man movie because it's just not. It's actually probably one of the best, but I don't know. I think I'd rank it above Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 because to me, like, I'm not saying Spider-Man 3 is bad. It's just clearly you can tell that Sony wanted to do something different and Sam Raimi does what Sam Raimi wants. So if he wants to do this, he's going to do that. So I think I definitely rank it above there and above The Amazing Spider-Man 2 because, again, like we mentioned, and funny, this was the thing 10 years ago, which shit really was 10 years ago. They were trying to set up a bigger universe that obviously never panned out because they kept focusing on that. And I'm too biased by the other films, but even then, like, I think it's entertaining for what it is. Again, just when I want to watch something kind of dumb, I'll just put it on the background and just call it even by that point. Or if I want to just show something to my friends that we like, all will make a drinking game out of it. And like, oh, every time he does this, take a shot. Actually, that's probably going to be a bad idea because if I say like every time he slaps a woman, we're going to be pretty shit-faced, but still.
Yeah. Chris, where do you rank Italian Spider-Man in your Spider-Man movies?
I have controversial Spider-Man opinions.
Okay.
I understand cinematically that the new Spider-Mans are good. I do think he does a good job. I don't love them as Spider-Man movies because to me, Tobey will be my Spider-Man for all time. And while I don't feel Italian Spider-Man is very Spider-Man-y, he is a lot of fun to watch. And I would rather rewatch this several times over rewatching some of the newer ones, which have a lot more emotional weight and like digestion involved in them. So from a rewatch standpoint, this ranks very high in my Spider-Man world. From a Spider-Man, I don't know if I can qualify him as a Spider-Man. So, like, from that point, pretty low.
Hey, he's Italian Spider-Man. He's the cousin they don't talk about.
Look, even Spider-Pig is more Spider-Man-y than this guy, so, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat as you, though, Chris. I, like, Tobey Maguire is my Spider-Man, and honestly, I'm only including the live actions. I'm not including Into the Spider-Verse, because that's a whole different category of Spider-Man movies. I would say Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Italian Spider-Man, then the Tom Holland Spider-Mans, then, what was the other dude's name?
Andrew Garfield. That hurts. You don't even know him.
Yeah, Andrew Garfield, and then Spider-Man 3.
Oh, okay, well.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's just one of the... I got to go back and rewatch some of the old ones, so my ranking might be a little bit dated and biased, but... So, speaking of Spider-Man universes, Cal, would you rather have your dream Spider-Man universe or a universe based on Italian Spider-Man?
I kind of want to see a universe based off of this, purely for the fact that... So, when I was watching the intro, I think, and I could be wrong, but I didn't deep dive it, but I think there's a green character they show, and I'm like, oh, that clearly looks like it's going to be the Green Goblin, but they're not going to say it because if they obviously can't. But it had me thinking, like, right around then, I'm like, what if we had every villain, like, I'm just thinking like Venom and Carnage, who are just so absurd for this universe to take place. I'm like, I can't imagine how that would even be like, or just like, there's so many other serious villains out there. Like you have Scorpion or Kraven the Hunter, who hasn't really been done justice besides the recent game, or even just like his more absurd villains like Rocket Racer, which I'm just trying to imagine like how that actually would probably fit really well with this universe, considering he was really stupid and over the top in the '90s show. It was only made for toys because you can clearly tell. I'm like, oh, there's the figure that I played with as a kid, and there's the action figures. Like, I'd like to. I just want to see villains with this because I mean we've already had several good versions of Spider-Man. I want to see bad versions. I want to see things I can make fun of with my friends. I want to see versions where we can get drunk and just laugh at it together and saying, "Wow, this is a shit show." Like, because at the end of the day, besides the few movies we mentioned, there really hasn't been anything that bad or anything so bad it's good really so far. Like everything's been pretty okay, good and great, nothing that bad. So
I was just thinking at first my mind went Venom or Carnage because they consume that they were just some morbidly obese guy as like their superhero. But then I thought, what if they were just like the silly putty? Like that's they were was just.
I was very much thinking like Nickelodeon's green slime just being shot out of a cannon slightly off screen.
So, Chris, would you rather have a?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah.
I
need an Italian Spider-Man universe. It tickles the same fancy as Austin Powers and like Kung Pao, and honestly, we haven't had a parody movie that hit culture that hard in a long time. I feel like Italian Spider-Man could do it.
Come to think of it now, I don't think there really has been much of the parody genre in a long time. Like ever since like anything that ended with movie at the very end of it, like superhero movie or like whatever those kind of died out at early 2010s. So this could be a good revival
budget
for that.
movie.
Yeah, Italian Spider-Man could fill that void for me.
Hey, if they end up doing something about it tomorrow, I'd be thrilled. I'm like, I will watch it day one just to see the absurdity they can come up with because I just love to get inside that guy's head and see what he do.
Yeah, and I was thinking of like how they could interject him into the Spider-Verse because of the style. What I want them to do is he's the only live action person across the Spider-Verse, just in the background, some random Italian Spider-Man.
In a towel walking between doors.
I would kind of love to see that happen. Like, considering like they brought in the 60s version out of the blue, which I never thought I'd ever see in anything past the 60s show, or they brought in the version where he was a T-Rex, which again, never thought I'd ever see that in anything. And I remember seeing that in the animation, like, oh, so really anything is possible. They did not hold back in the Spider-Verse movie. And again, I still will vouch for that. I don't know how they'd pull it off legally, because I'm sure it's a nightmare behind the scenes to pull it off, but I still would, even just a really brief reference to him would be hysterical. I'm sure it'd be one of those things you have to like really analyze and find, but still.
Just some random line, respect women, and then they just ignore it.
It'd be good. It'd be very good.
So I got another universe-related question. You have to replace, and I'll limit it to the live actions. If you had to replace one Spider-Man universe with Italian Spider-Man, which one would it be? The other Spider-Man universe never exists.
Oh.
Okay. I think I'd replace with Andrew Garfield's, because hear me out, like, because Tom Holland just works too well with RDJ, and even then, like, I just can't see it working with this larger universe. And Tobey Maguire, again, same thing, I just can't see it working. But I think because Andrew Garfield's films were just so hyper serious, because it was right around then when The Dark Knight came out, and everyone's like, yeah, we got to be dark and edgy with all of our films. We can't be we can't be committed. We have to be so serious. And I think just adding his absurdness into everything would be so funny, watching him try to take on the Lizard or Electro, and again, like, or him just interacting with Gwen, because my whole thought is like he's just gonna be slapping the shit out of her. He'd just be slapping her whenever he sees her, and then he'll say like respect my authority, or go fix that. Like, I think that could work really well. Plus, nobody really likes the Amazing Spider-Man films. I will just say that because I really enjoy Andrew Garfield, but I will say he got done really dirty in those films, as he got written really poorly. But at the same time, like, he made it work for what he did because he's a good actor. But I think just adding him in there would have just leaned into everything the way it was. And like I said, I think that'd be really funny just watching him walk up and just slap everybody, or even then, like the final fight between him and Electro or Lizard just had like, oh, we must fight like men by surfing, and just a cut to the two of them just surfing. I'd want to see that.
What he would do is he'd be like, respect women.
Cappuccino.
No, it wasn't cappuccino. I was thinking of
Macchiato. Was it a macchiato or something?
No, I was thinking the thing I was gonna say. Go get me my vape.
Yeah, update it just slightly.
Or like some really over. Oh god, unfortunately, you could probably get whichever one of the stupid blonde-haired dipshits who owns Prime. Go get me my Prime.
Yeah. Yeah. Lead.
So, Chris, which universe would you replace?
I'm gonna have to go with Cal on this one. I think some solid logic. I also think that like the bad guys available for Italian Spider-Man to have to fight would be pretty solid here. I mean, surfing competition between them would be good. Would be very good.
So I think we're all in agreement. We'll get rid of Garfield's.
Yeah, I think we have, and I feel bad because he did a really good job. It's the most easily replaceable Spider-Man.
Yeah, because I don't get me wrong, I like Garfield. I thought he was the best blend of like nerdy. Because I think as much as I love Tobey Maguire,
sure,
he was a little too cool to be nerdy. Like he wasn't that nerdy. Whereas like Garfield was the embodiment of a nerd.
Well, there's a really good scene I love in the first movie where he's talking to Gwen and trying to ask her out, but like he's trying to play it cool at the same time, and like that's just some awkward shit that I would do as a kid, and like same thing like a lot of men or boys that age would just do. We're trying to act really cool talking to a girl when really he's not. Like he looks kind of dumb, and that I think worked well because it's with Tobey Maguire. He didn't look natural with glasses. I think personally. I think like because they didn't do it very much with it for a reason. Even then, he just didn't. I never felt it with him. Like he had the nerd look to him, but he just didn't feel like Peter Parker. Versus Andrew was a good combo of the two of them very well. So,
and even then, like Tom Holland, I think the reason Tom Holland doesn't feel as nerdy, even though he is a big old nerd in it, is because Zendaya is also. I can't even remember her character. Is she also Mary Jane or
she's MJ, but like not really. Like I don't like the way that's another thing. I don't like the way they kind of like allude to it, but like, oh, it's gonna be this, but not really. Like it's like that, but it's not. So
yeah, I think pinning down a type of nerd is very difficult to do, especially when Spider-Man was meant to be like the everyman nerd, and that's really hard to pull off for any actor, especially one who then is going to be turned into a superhero. So like you already have to have you have to be going into this with some level of expectation of working out and like having that training before you start. And to an extent, like I mean, you're getting hired, you're gonna be Spider-Man. It's not like you're gonna start eating donuts every day. Yeah. So like that is a really hard balance to do. And so like Italian Spider-Man clearly did not care about that casting role. He said, I am Superman. I am super. And I drink macchiatos and smoke cigarettes every day.
I am the average Italian, even though that's my French accent.
I was going to say that was not Italian in any way.
I don't know how to do an Italian accent. But yeah, like I said, this movie was more of a parody of an Italian than...
It was.
Or Italian cinema. No, maybe not the Italians, but Italian cinema of that era.
It really was. And I think having... And like I know Spider-Verse kind of goes through... and touches more on like the different personalities that the Spider-Man has had throughout the comics and throughout the universe. But boy, Italian Spider-Man fits into a spot that I don't think any other Spider-Man truly has embedded. He's never really been this man. And maybe that's a good thing in, large scale media, but I do have an affection for this man. He is stupid and I love him.
I think when we first met, and this is the animated one, Into the which one was it? Into the Spider-Verse, when we meet the alternative Spider-Man, Peter Parker, where he's given up, he's gained some weight.
But he has a depression about him. Italian Spider-Man has no depression because he knows he's on top of the world.
That's exactly what it is. It's the confidence that this man exudes. Big dick energy.
Big dick energy.
And he gives no fucks about anything around him versus like Peter B was just down on his luck and he having a really shitty hand dealt to him. Like the Italian Spider-Man, just if he wanted to do something, he did whatever he wanted and nobody questioned him otherwise. If he wanted to, so.
Exactly.
I just thought of a horrible thing of him and if he was the Spider-Man and not Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, when Mary Jane's back snaps and he's just like,
No,
oh
you're
well.
fine.
Or he's like, oh well.
Oh,
and then
well.
just
And
leaves.
That would have been the movie, yeah.
Or there's a scene at the very end when he's fighting the Rhino and there's a kid there trying to stand up to him. And I can just imagine, like, he's got it, and just teleports away and then sees the kid getting killed in the back. Like, he shouldn't have done anything.
Yeah.
Like, or just sitting there, like, well, he had it coming, and just teleports away.
Actually, that's a good question I didn't think of. If you could replace any of the Spider-Mans in their universe with Italian Spider-Man,
I think they're all a good option, really. It's just in different ways they would be good options. Because, like, that's the thing about Spider-Man. Spider-Man cares a lot about everyone around him.
Yeah, he's the friendly neighborhood.
He is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Italian Spider-Man is not the friendly Italian neighborhood Spider-Man. He's just there.
He's the embodiment of with great power. Or how's the saying go? Like in Kick-Ass.
With great power, I don't have to give a fuck.
Yeah, something like almost. I said that in Kick-Ass. Like, if no power comes no responsibility, but that's not true. Like, he didn't give a fuck at all the entire time, and that's something we've never seen, and probably never will see in any kind of Spider-Man media ever. Because they're never going to go away from his goody two shoes look.
I would argue in most superhero films we don't get to see that sort of like just disregard for others without it being shown as like oh, look how terrible this person is.
Yeah.
Italian Spider-Man is not like lit in the light of, wow, look how terrible this guy is. He could have saved all these people. No, it's just funny because he's the main character in his own play.
Yeah, like you wouldn't laugh at that with Homelander because Homelander is intentionally written to be a shitty Superman or to be a bully Superman. He's never meant to be, oh, let's laugh at this guy and how shitty he is. Like, no, he's meant to be, you're not supposed to like this guy. You're supposed to hate him for what he's done and why he's the exact opposite of what Superman represents. So,
exactly.
Well, so last question I have for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
If you could have one of Italian Spider-Man's powers, what would it be?
There's so many good options here, though.
Yeah. Because I was torn between this because I thought the teleportation would have been great because I'm lazy. I'll just be honest with you guys. I'm lazy. So if I want to go somewhere, I'll just teleport. I won't even think about driving anymore. Or they're random thing that compare it to. But there's a series I watched on YouTube called Death Battle where they put two people against each other who are very similar. And one of the things they brought up was Deadpool has a teleportation device. And he uses that in combat. I'm like, I wouldn't use it when I'm fighting people. But I'm like, I could just use that for so many different purposes just to fuck with people or just really get what I want out of life. So I think the teleportation would be great, but at the same time, there is just some absurdity to the freaking mustache being whatever the hell it is. And honestly, I would never shave again. Like, there's a couple days where I'm like, maybe I can go clean shaven again. I'm like, no, I would never shave again. I would carry that mustache with me to the day I die. I would be buried with my mustache, and I would be so proud of it. So I think between those two, I have to take the cake for me, just because, again, one's for practical uses, one I just wouldn't take seriously.
This is understandable. Yeah, there's a lot of like real world logic I could put on honestly any of these powers, right? But there are two that like stand out to me as far as like what brought me joy.
Mm-hmm.
And summoning penguins does bring me joy, but not because I like penguins. I in fact hate penguins. I think they're stinky and gross. But that could be used to my advantage in many a circumstance.
Wait, I just had a dumb thought. Okay, I'll make an exception for this one. If you can summon penguins, but they're Danny DeVito, they're like
if it's Danny DeVito the penguin, I'm summoning all the penguins. That's my favorite bad guy.
Easy choice right there without even an ounce of doubt.
But that's not an option. So what would your actual power be?
So we say in this episode that he pulls guns out of his ass, but what he does is he does the whole like art like video game logic where he like reaches behind him and like then there's a gun that definitely could not have fit back there. So it's essentially what I understand is he has inventory. He has an inventory pouch somewhere and he's just filled it with guns, which honestly not a bad choice, but like I think I'm gonna go for the gun pulling because I would like to think that there's a whole inventory system there that feels very like practical without too extortion-y, because otherwise I'm over here like trying to figure out how to get the chickens to lay cigarettes so I can sell them and make money.
Yeah, and consider you never have to worry about carrying a backpack everywhere you go ever again. You could just carry everything in your like Toon Force-esque bag of anything. So, because that's something that
to be able to reach behind oneself and just Mary Poppins crap into existence would be fantastic as a like constant overpacker. As someone who has multiple emotional support books that have to go with them everywhere, that would be great.
I can see it. I am definitely going in a different direction than you guys. I'm already a sex machine, so already got that power.
Yeah, check that.
I'm going to change your walk on to say that from now on when you come in my stream now.
Yes. I would actually go with control spiders.
This was a close second for me because for those who haven't seen the movie, the spider is a large like prop spider from the Dollar Tree, and much like Monty Python and the Holy Grail, it chews through a man's neck.
Yeah.
So like, it's a solid choice.
I would like it just because I wish I lived in an area where I could befriend crows and have an army of crows. Mm-hmm. So this is like a close second for me.
Is the spider version of crows.
Yes.
All right.
How do you know how cool that would be? Just have your spiders go out collecting change. I just described that golden harvest in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. That's what his power is. God fucking damn it!
I would say, did you just become the Rat Man?
I'm sorry, you call me a weeb sometimes, and that's just pure weebness right there. But
I call everyone who even remotely watches
out
anime
of all of the things the spiders could do, the spiders could do a lot. They are spiders, and you have chosen for them to go pick up pennies off the Walmart parking lot for you.
Yeah.
All right. Whatever makes you happy.
They're like my little foot sprites.
Yeah, but like I feel like we could go one level higher.
You could be the equivalent of Ant-Man, but not Ant-Man.
Yeah, you're right, Cal. I am just Ant-Man then at that point, but spiders. I'm the real Spider-Man.
I'm just trying to imagine you with just like an army of crows behind, like, oh, hey, what's up, Cal? Like, that's a lot of crows. Holy shit. And just seeing like just you covered in crows. Like, yeah, it's just a normal day for me. And just you keep walking.
He would have just so many peanuts in his pockets trying to bribe them.
Yeah. It'd be awesome.
It would be.
My cats would attack the windows a lot, but I'd have an army of crows.
I want to say, I think your cats might be roughly the same size and shape as the crow.
So, Cal, you got any other last thoughts or points on Italian Spider-Man?
I just think the fact that this was still made to begin with, like, and just there's so much about it that it did right in the time frame. Like, I don't know if this could have worked another way. Like, we talked about mediocre films not really being a thing anymore. I don't know if this could have worked today, because maybe, like, if this came out, it would have been unnoticed on YouTube, because, like Chris has mentioned, YouTube has become really a business at the end of the day. Like, I didn't think YouTube was that serious until Cobra Kai. I don't know if you guys even heard of it. It was a show on YouTube that got put to Netflix because Netflix saw a lot of potential, and like that just doesn't really exist anymore. Like, I don't know any other shows that have been that big on YouTube that got bought out by a major company, and I think it would have just been one of those other videos you have to find in the algorithm, which I don't think anybody would have found it. I think because I'm sure Disney would have probably shut this down probably immediately as soon as they seen or heard anything of it, because Disney being the way they are, they're very... If you say jump, you have to say how high. So I can't imagine this would have been released, but I think I'm glad that it didn't. And like part of me, like at the very end of it, said I want more from this, but I'm like, I'm okay with this being just a standalone, because I think they even put like a part 2 coming soon, or to be continued. I'm like, I'm okay with this because they don't need anything else with this. Like we've talked about, it was never meant to be that deep. It's meant to just be a one-off idea that they did probably to get started with their film careers and then go from there. So I'm grateful this happens.
Yeah, I feel if they did a second part, it would be like Thanksgiving 3, where they skip Thanksgiving 2 and they just completely lost the plot of why people loved the first Thanksgiving movie, because it was dumb, stupid, and didn't matter. And then Thanksgiving 3, they gave it a little bit too much of a plot and just lost anything that it had going for it.
Yeah, I think with things like this, regardless of if it's just some guys in their basement making it, or if, God smiles upon us and mid-range media comes back, like having a gap in between the thing that you're making and you love versus the new version of that thing, it will always be bad. Mm-hmm. Because you've now had time for nostalgia glasses. You're no longer keeping up with what is like your current version of that thing, right? You're just trying to recreate a magic, and that's not how magic works. And so I love this. I don't want it to come back though.
No.
The guys who worked on it, and I want others to take note, like this is hilarious. This is very good. Having this as the backbone as opposed to just like reworking Marvel would be very entertaining to me.
And I think with the way Spider-Man fans are, like, we're constantly craving more stuff because they just they finally showed off some images for this new Spider-Man show we're getting again, and we're always craving more media for him. I think, like, if the wider fan base knew about this, they'd be really impressed because, again, like we talked about, it's not great by any means. It doesn't adapt to anything, and that's kind of its strength at the end of the day because it doesn't try to, like, recreate something that's been done previously, or doesn't try to do a story that's been previously done and try to make it better, or I guess, and again, it's just fucking dumb as hell. Like, it's just dumb as hell, and there's nothing else but really to describe it besides that. Like, I still will stand by it being the Room of superhero movies, because sure, Batman and Robin was bad, but it was intentionally made to be that way. It was meant to cash in on the 60s Batman. This just did whatever it wanted and didn't care.
Yeah, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think the Spider-Man Noir TV show would be a good spot to do like a mystery of the week.
Yeah, no, that'd be a great place to do it, especially if they really leaned into the old version of noir styling, because that's what it used to be. It was mystery of the week,
and it's also Nicolas Cage, so of course he's going to bring in some obscure movie reference,
as the man always does.
Yeah,
I am still really curious to how it's going to turn out because they haven't done a whole lot of news about it yet, and it really is Nicolas Cage that has me so excited for this because there's so many ways they can go with this. It could be so serious with Nicolas Cage mannerisms, or it could just be not serious and with Nicolas Cage as well. I don't know, but I'm excited to see how it turns out, and I will be there day one to watch it.
You and me both.
Definitely.
So, I guess on the ratings, Cal, on our good, bad, weird scale, what do you rate this movie?
Good weird, because it was the right amount of weird and the right amount of bad that I wanted. I think I will rewatch this film pretty often over the next few years, considering I'm going to have a very good soft spot for it now. And like I said, it didn't do anything amazing. It was good for what it was. It was a nice time to watch the other night where it was just something I wanted just to zone out and watch something. So if I'm ever in that mood where I want to either laugh or just watch something with friends and have a good time, I'll just watch that film. And I know what I'm going to get into as well, so...
Chris, good, bad, weird rating?
This for me is the holy trifecta. This was a fantastic watch. I will be now forcing as many people as I can to watch it again if they have already seen it. And for my dear husband who has not seen it because he had to work today while I rewatched it during the daylight hours, he will be watching it this evening against his will.
I'm in the same boat as you, Chris. It's a holy trifecta. If I had a lads night, I would have had them watch it too. They might have to watch it.
I say next week, fair game, because at girls' night, this is heavy on the list of things we might watch if Say Yes to the Dress runs out of episodes.
I do kind of love that we all want to show all this to all of our friends, because I'm already considering just doing a movie night in Discord. Like, hey guys, we're going to watch this film. If you haven't seen it, well, now you're going to watch it with me. If you've seen it, you're going to watch it again with me because we all need to enjoy this together. So,
yeah, I think we all unanimously agree to recommend this movie in general. Just
without a doubt,
it's hilarious. It's the perfect length. There's nothing for you to like have to worry about someone being like, man, it's just not quite my taste. There is no taste to be had. It's a tasteless movie.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I don't know. It's definitely one of those ones where I think it's here's the thing. I think it is the reason I would recommend it is I think it's a nice break in the superhero fatigue that we have, where it's just pure dumb stupidity that we all need in our lives from time to time. Just shut off your brain for a little bit.
For sure.
Exactly.
And it's stupid in a genre that honestly there's not a lot of like easy rewatches available. Normally the stupid movies that are available readily are creature features and horrors. And don't get me wrong, I live for those two genres, but every once in a while I don't want to see blood.
Yeah.
Well, even that, we bring up a good point earlier. Like, sometimes you just, after a long day of working and you just are tired and don't want to think about anything, you just want to watch something dumb. You just want to watch something that rots your brain. You want to sit back, maybe have some snacks and just kind of enjoy yourself. You don't want to have, like I said, you don't have to overanalyze every film. We don't have to get so deep with these films. Like, we need to know the rising action. We need to know the actors who worked on this, what they went through, like how some of them method the shit out of the role and decided how they let them overcome their life. Like, no, this guy probably didn't think anything of it after he was done filming it and went from there. He just had a good time with his friends probably and called it a day. Like, there's nothing deep about it, and that's what I think will make it work well in the long run. So
Cal, I want to thank you for being on the show again. It's always a good time having you. You got some interesting aspects, and I'm glad I got to introduce you to this, because this has been a staple of like my family's like references for quite a long time now, and I was completely thrown back that you had not even heard of this. So
I'm glad you introduced it to me. I don't think I would have probably come across it till like one late night, or I'm just like on Reddit looking at things, and it would have been, hey, look at this random film, and then just I would have watched it. Then I don't think I would have gone on my way to find it, because like I said, I'm just surprised I've never heard this in anything. Like, there's not a single reference to it in like any of the memes that I've seen or any of the groups I'm a part of. Like, and I'm a part of a lot of groups, and no one has brought this up once. So pleasantly surprised, and I'm glad that this was out there, that existed. Plus, it made me think back to just YouTube for back in the day, and just how YouTube has changed so much. Like, there was a parody video that I saw from The Dark Knight. I'm like, wow, these genre of videos do not exist anymore, because like Chris has mentioned, they're all just now films. Like Markiplier did a choose your own adventure film that was, sure, it was great, but still, like, YouTube, what happened to the days where it could have just been some guy with a camera who had too much time on his hands and just want to make a video? So
art.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love that it's evolved. I love that these people who are so talented and like creative have a way to like show that off without having to pay these big corporations to do it, or like hope that they get discovered. But man, I miss shit like this. This is so fun.
I do too. So, but Cal, thank you again. Plug your stuff, my friend.
So I'm on Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. I guess it's now X. Nobody really calls it that though. But on Twitter and YouTube, Kalloth0467. I tend to stream about 2 to 3 days a week. I play a little bit of everything. Haven't played a Spider-Man game in a while, but that possibly might change, because I did get Midnight Suns not that long ago, and he's in it. So, I mean, I wanted to stream that because it's the first time I'll be playing it. So, check me out and just have some fun. Check out Nacho, too. He's awesome. I love watching his stuff, because really, we didn't talking about movies the whole time, but still, check out Nacho.
Yeah, Spider-Man's actually how we met. Brit Attacks rated you, and
yeah, right.
You were playing Spider-Man with the Japanese dub over it.
Right. I can't think it was somebody else who rated him. Like, it wasn't, because I can't think it was one of my other friends who doesn't stream anymore. I'm like, who was it that rated me? I'm like, oh, it was Brit. Thank you for reminding me, because we had that conversation. And next thing you know, here we are almost 2 years later, which is really funny, because it was right around October, I think we met, and now it's coming full circle. So
this time last year we recorded The Last of Us. So
yeah, what are the odds of that? We did that almost the exact same time frame.
Just August, we free up a little bit, so
yeah,
we want to have people we want to talk to stuff on. So,
well, thank you guys for having me. I had a lot of fun watching this, and again, always love chatting with you guys. I look forward to this every time we do this, because I just love talking with people who like movies, and also you guys have different perspectives than I do, because I'm going to see things clearly differently from you guys, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I have a fun time. I hope you guys can have me on again.
Yeah,
definitely.
So everyone go check out Cal, and this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.